Close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and let it out slowly. You are safe here. You are warm. The sounds of the night wrap around you like a blanket. Outside, the world is quiet. The streets are empty. The houses are dark. But in the spaces between, in the shadows where the streetlights don't reach, that is where the stories live. Tonight's story takes us to a hotel on the edge of a city where the road runs out and the forest begins. He arrived late. It was always late with him. Flights delayed, meetings running over, dinner reservations he could never make. The hotel was small, the kind of place that had once been grand and was now simply old. The lobby smelled of wood polish and something faintly floral, like dried flowers that had been left in a vase too long. The clerk behind the desk was a young man with tired eyes who looked at his reservation and then looked at him for a moment longer than was comfortable. Room 313. The clerk handed him the key and hesitated. Then he said something that the businessman did not catch, and when the businessman asked him to repeat it, the clerk just shook his head and said, "Enjoy your stay." The elevator was old too, the kind with a gate that folded open and a motor that groaned. The hallway on the third floor was long and carpeted in a pattern that might have been floral once, but was now just a blur of faded color. Room 313 was at the end of the hall. The key turned stiffly in the lock, and the door opened onto a room that was exactly what he expected. A bed, a nightstand, a lamp, a desk, a window that looked out onto the parking lot. The bathroom was small, the towels were white, and the water took a long time to get hot. He unpacked his bag, set his alarm for 6, and climbed into bed. He was almost asleep when he heard the first sound. It was faint, so faint that at first he thought it was the building itself, the settling of old wood and older pipes. But then he heard it again, and he knew what it was. Laughter. The laughter of children, high and bright, muffled as if coming through a wall. He lay still and listened. There were 2 voices at least, maybe 3, and they were playing. He could hear the sound of small feet running across a floor, the kind of patter that is unmistakable once you know what you are hearing. He checked his watch. It was almost midnight. He got up and pressed his ear to the wall. The laughter was coming from the room on the other side of the connecting door. He looked at that door. It was closed. There was a small sign on it, the kind that says, "Do not disturb," but it was faded and old, and the words were barely legible. He knocked gently out of politeness more than anything. The laughter stopped. The room was silent for a moment. Then he heard something else, a woman humming. It was a melody he did not recognize, soft and sweet, the kind of tune a mother might hum to a child. It was accompanied by another sound, a rhythmic creaking, like the rocking of an old chair. He stood there and listened, and the humming continued, and the chair continued to rock, and somewhere in the background the children were laughing again. Or perhaps they had never stopped. He went back to bed. He was a practical man. There were explanations for everything: thin walls, bad insulation, sound carrying from another floor. He pulled the covers up and closed his eyes. But you are safe here. The walls are thick and the night is long. You are warm in your bed and the sounds are only sounds. He woke again to a different sound, a woman's voice, close now, not humming but speaking. He could not make out the words, but the tone was clear. She was talking to someone. A child, he thought. She was talking to a child, and her voice was gentle and patient, and she was explaining something. Then a child's voice answered, small and sleepy, and the woman's voice softened to a whisper. He sat up in bed. The sounds were not coming from the wall anymore. They were coming from the connecting door. He stood and walked to it, and he stood there and listened, and the woman's voice was clearer now. She was singing a lullaby. He could hear the words, but they were in a language he did not know. Or perhaps they were in a language that no longer existed. The melody was simple and beautiful, and it made him feel something he could not name, something that was not quite sadness and not quite peace. The chair was still rocking. He could hear the creak of it, steady as a heartbeat, and the child was quiet now, or the child was sleeping. The woman's voice grew softer and softer until it was barely a breath, and then it stopped. The chair stopped rocking. The room was silent. He reached for the door handle. He did not know why. He was not a man who opened doors without reason, but his hand found the handle and turned it, and the door opened. The room on the other side was identical to his. The same bed, the same nightstand, the same lamp, but it was empty. There was no woman, no child, no chair. The bed was made. The pillows were undisturbed. The room looked as if no one had been in it for years. He stood in the doorway and looked at the room. The air was different here, heavier, and it carried a smell that he recognized now. It was the smell of old flowers, not dried flowers in a vase, but flowers that had been left to wilt and decay. Their sweetness turned to something cloying and sour. He stepped inside, and the carpet felt different under his feet, softer, as if it were absorbing his weight. He looked at the bed. There was an indentation in the pillow, the shape of a small head. There was a wrinkle in the sheets, the shape of a small body, as if someone had just been there, as if someone had just gotten up and walked away. He turned to go back to his room, and that was when he saw the photograph on the nightstand. It had not been there a moment ago. He picked it up. It was a family, a man, a woman, 2 children, all smiling, all standing in front of this hotel. The photograph was old, the colors faded to a warm sepia, and there was writing on the back, a date and a name. The name was the same as the name on his reservation. He put the photograph down and went back to his room and closed the connecting door. He locked it. He went back to bed and lay there and listened, and the room was silent. The humming did not return. The chair did not rock. The children did not laugh. But he did not sleep again that night. He lay there and stared at the ceiling and thought about the photograph, and the woman's voice, and the child's indentation in the pillow. And he thought about the clerk's hesitation when he had handed him the key. In the morning he checked out. The clerk was different now, a woman with a bright smile who asked if he had enjoyed his stay. He said it was fine. He asked about the room next to his, the one with the connecting door. The clerk looked at the screen and said there was no room next to his. The 3rd floor only had rooms on one side of the hall. There was no room on the other side. There never had been. He looked at the layout on her screen and she was right. The space where room 314 should have been was a wall. Just a wall. He left the hotel and got in his car and drove to the airport. And he never stayed in that hotel again. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and the world was asleep, he would hear it, a woman humming, a chair rocking, And he would lie very still and listen, and he would think about the connecting door, and the photograph, and the indentation in the pillow. And he would wonder if the room had ever really been empty at all. You are safe here. The walls around you are solid, and the night is quiet. The sounds you hear are only the sounds of the world settling into sleep. Close your eyes. Let the darkness hold you. Sleep well.